Hi, my name is Bob Spurzem. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager with EMC. Welcome and thanks for joining me today. One of the biggest challenges facing all organizations is storage growth. And one of the most commonly used technologies to combat storage growth is archiving. So what does archiving mean? Let me propose that it really is built upon really three key areas. First is around the area of managing storage more efficiently. Here we get technologies such as deduplication, certainly storage tiering, and there's many others. What we're driving at here is trying to manage storage with that growth and storing it more cost effectively. The second area I would touch on is keeping data accessible. With large amounts of data, it's important that users will be able to access it just because of the sheer amount of the data. Or now with the advent of all the popular mobile devices, users are putting other access requirements on that same data. A good example is our email. Do we want to just store and have access to 6 months of email? Or would rather have a full 6 years of email? I think probably the latter would be true. So managing accessibility while storage continues to accumulate and grow is an important part of archiving. And the final area I'd like to touch on is areas of legal discovery. Your email, your files, these are very often the centerpiece of legal discovery and may involve lawsuits by your company or against your company, and this information has to be found, securely held, perhaps indefinitely. So legal discovery can be an important challenge, and that's also one that we address with archiving. So one of the things that we thought we would do is we had important authors from a consulting firm, Contouro, here based in Mountain View, California. They wrote for us this paper, The 7 Essential Strategies of Effective Archiving. And in this paper, the authors outlined these 7 key steps, which I'd like to take you through just as a quick kind of a summary, give you a taste of the paper. But at the end, I'll share with you where you can find this paper, and I urge you to read it in its entirety, because there's lots and lots of useful information. So let's just go through these 7 steps quickly, starting with the first one. Very often, archive and backup get confused, but actually they're very different. Now, granted, they are the same from the point of view, they're both managing the same set of data, perhaps your file share or your email server. But how they use that data and why they're using it are very different. To make my case, I'll define backup as storing data, perhaps multiple copies of data, for recovery. If a file gets corrupt, we want to replace it with the last known good copy. Archiving takes that same file, but keeps one copy as a primary copy, as a record, perhaps to be used later by users or to be used perhaps for discovery. So those are just 2 differences of backup and archiving, and I would make sure we don't get those 2 confused or make the wrong assumption that they are indeed the same. Number 2. Backups have benefited greatly by using disk as a target for backup, but I would also urge you to consider that you should adopt a disk-based archiving approach. And now we could talk about the benefits like backup of storage efficiency and deduplication that's possible, and those are true. But I also want to make the important point that with archiving, that accessibility is so important. And for that reason, a disk-based archive is almost essential to be able to search, index, and find that data quickly, either by users or perhaps for legal discovery. Let's look at number 3. Here at Data Domain, we have a very unique storage system. You've probably heard of it, Data Domain. It's a very unique solution, and one of its key benefits it can deliver is in the consolidation of backup and archiving. I mentioned at the start that backup and archiving use the same data, perhaps the same files, the same email. And when you store them together on Data Domain, you can have great storage efficiency because they will dedupe 100% together. So this is kind of a unique one to Data Domain, but we put it here on our list and urge you to consider that one. Number 4. As data is growing, one of the big challenges is keeping track of it. And classification, I think, is very important. You should consider that from the get-go. It's hard to come in after the fact and organize data. It can be done, but I would urge you to also consider it up front and achieve the benefits of classification from the start. You can classify data right from the source, from the email and the file shares. Now, classify it by how? Well, given an archiving product like EMC Source 1, you have complete flexibility of classifying your data by type, by user, by department, by whether it's a legal case you're saving data for. Those are just 3 or 4 simple examples. But I urge you to consider the importance of classifying your data so you can manage it more effectively down the road. Number 5. You've probably considered retention, but I'm going to embellish a little bit by calling it value-based retention. With all the data you're being stored, you don't want to store the junk. Everybody understands the story of, well, if it's an email that says, let's have lunch tomorrow at noon, that doesn't need to be stored. So looking at your data for its value and storing that data that you need is a very important concept. And it's kind of a tricky one, but it's one here on your list, and the paper will talk about ways to achieve that through areas like classification and other automation tips that can make this very beneficial to you. Number 6, and you can see these kind of build together, because defensible deletion, once you decided what you've classified things, you're retaining the right data for the proper amount of time. Now when that data does reach its period of expiration, then you want to remove that data. And what does it mean defensively? Well, if you were to be called in by a judge at a court, or perhaps you're in a regulated industry, and the auditors might come in and say, well, where is that data? Why did this data get removed? You would be able to defensively say, it was removed for these reasons that all met the letter of the law, and you'd have full defense of what you did. So you can get rid of data properly when the time has come and be able to prove that you have not made any mistakes in the handling of that data. The end result to you is that you're not storing data unnecessarily, of course, increasing your cost. And finally, kind of a catch-all, the only constant in this whole scenario here is data growth. Everything else is continually changing. I can point to examples such as the legal discovery challenges have really just really been strong in the last 5-6 years and will continue to be important challenges. Areas of accessibility, users now using smartphones and tablets have created new changes and demands on your archiving strategy. So the bottom line here is this is a process that it's a living process, and in doing so you're working and planning for today, but don't forget you're always going to also be planning for the future. So I've given you just a quick summary of these 7 key pillars, I think, of effective archiving, and I urge you to go to the paper, and I promised I'd tell you where to find the paper, and we made it very simple. You go to www.emc.com/archiving, and you'll see it right at the top of that page, and I urge you to download it and enjoy it. Thank you very much.